So thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here after almost 34 months, something like that. It was April 2016, right? So it is February 2019, yeah, almost 3 years. And I'm really glad to see some familiar faces in the audience, and even more glad to see new faces in the audience. So, in this rather short presentation, I would like to put the whole thing in context, rather explain a few of the many acronyms that, and abbreviations that you have heard already. So to put the things on the map, we've heard about the Connecting Europe facility, and this Connecting Europe facility does exactly what the term, what the components, the component terms try to convey. It tries to build trans-European networks, efficiently interconnected trans-European networks in three important areas: transport, energy, and telecom. For our purposes today, we focus on telecom. And inside telecom, we have two smaller bubbles, one of them being broadband over there that you see, which does what the term denotes, and a bit larger bubble is concerned with building the so-called digital service infrastructures that collectively are denoted as CEF Digital, which aim at providing digital services in a number of areas, be they vertical areas, like, for instance, health, culture, social security, and the like, or horizontal areas, like, for instance, e-identification, delivery of information and documents in a secure manner, and most importantly and most interestingly for us today, e-translation. So imagine of these digital service infrastructures like a matrix that has a vertical dimension where you have domain-specific or activity-specific digital service infrastructures, as well as horizontal services that cut across all domains, irrespective of their thematic focus. Now, inside the CEF Digital bubble, we have e-translation that Micha just presented. And Micha said that, well, and I think he illustrated very, very efficiently, there are translations that can be produced automatically with quite successful results, quite acceptable results, and there are others where there are lots of problems. And why are there lots of problems? Simply because machine translation systems, most probably like humans, need to be trained, need to have been exposed to translation examples of the particular domain. Now, we need these translation examples, and this is what ELRC has set out to do, just to collect and appropriately process and deliver to the e-translation pipeline all those translation examples that are absolutely necessary for adapting e-translation and making better in new domains. Right. And while e-translation is clear that e-translation is performed by the European Commission, who is ELRC performed by? It is performed by the so-called ELRC consortium, which consists of 4 organizations: the DFKI, the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, the European Language Resources and Distributions Agency, the Institute for Language and Speech Processing, which I represent today, and Tilde, a language technology company from Latvia. But this is, if you want, the operational arm of ELRC, the people who try to act as facilitators of the whole enterprise. The key to ELRC is its ELRC network, a network that consists of 60 people divided into 2 different classes, 30 ELRC technological national anchor points, and 30 ELRC public services national anchor points. I think the terms speak for themselves. So technical national anchor points take the responsibility for providing some help and support for technical issues, while the public services national anchor points are our ambassadors inside the public sector in each and every country. And we would be totally useless for the whole enterprise, for the success of the whole enterprise, without these national anchor points. To exemplify, for Croatia, we already have a technical national anchor point, and this is Marko Tadic. Still, we are in the process of trying to find our ambassador in the public sector, but we will succeed. I'm pretty sure. Now, what does ELRC do? We do 5 things. We collect language resources wherever these exist. We identify the needs of public services, more or less, if you want, we try to do in a formalized manner or in a more organized manner what Miha tried to provide as an answer to the last question in the previous session. So we try to identify in which areas, if you want, we need to focus more, and in which areas we need to orient our efforts in collecting language data. And these areas will be, of course, the areas that the public sector representatives require some help in automating their translation tasks. And we do not do it alone, of course. We engage with the public sector in identifying these areas and identifying the language resources using which we will provide the appropriate translation services to the public sector. This roadway is not led with roses. There are roadblocks, and these roadblocks may come in the form of technical or legal questions. And ELRC is here to help with any sort of technical or legal issues that may pop up in the process of trying to identify and process and make and render appropriate the language data for training the translation engines. Last but not least, we try to act as an observatory of language resources in a sort of broader definition, not only data, but also tools, small tools, basic language processing tools that we use for processing data and making them appropriate for training translation engines. Why LRC? I think it is more or less obvious by now, just to facilitate multilingual communication and exchange of information in key public service scenarios. And some of these key public service scenarios already appear here: consumer rights, the so-called open dispute resolution, social security, e-justice, commerce, the business registry, interchange service, open data that has been already mentioned a couple of times. Now, ELRC comes really very timely. And it comes timely because as of 11th of September 2018, there was a resolution by the European Parliament in favor of language equality in the digital age. And what the European Parliament said, a the European Parliament asked the Commission and the Member States to develop strategies and policy action to facilitate multilingualism in the digital market, to define the minimum language resources that are necessary so that we prevent digital extinction of our languages on the digital sphere. Moreover, the Commission is called upon to make as a priority of language technology those member states and their corresponding languages which are small in size and have their own language, like Croatia is one of these examples. Concurrently, the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy stresses the role of the EU, the member states, universities and other public institutions in contributing to the preservation of their languages in the digital world and in developing databases and translation technologies for all EU languages, including languages that are less widely spoken. And this comes from the world of policy making, now in parallel, from the world of technology and science. As of 2016, by the Cracking the Language Barrier Federation, we were called upon not to leave, not to expect third parties from other continents to solve our translation and knowledge management problems, and we were called upon to develop language technology for Europe by Europe. So all blends quite nicely. So again, what we do, we collect, we identify, we engage, we help, and we act as an observatory for language resources across Europe, and we have a particular focus on those types of data that are quite idiosyncratic in their use, in their production, in their way of being discovered, if you wish. And it is this type of data that one would call the in-domain data. It is the data that is produced on a daily basis in our daily interactions. And it is this data that will make the difference in quality. It is this in-domain data that will make the difference in quality. And now, this in-domain data is the data that you produce on a daily basis, and that is similar to the data using which you would like to use and test any translation engine. My usual example is that I'm quite good in Greek, and I'm quite affordable in English. But, well, if you give me scientific papers in biochemistry or in biotechnology, you will really realize that the resulting translation that I will generate will indeed be laughable. Maybe even equally laughable as the translation that a translation system would generate. Simply because I've not been exposed to such examples. I do not know the terminology. I have not been used to translating this type of text. The genre is a bit unknown to me. So my translation faculty would be rather at a loss when confronted with this type of data. So it is this data that we are after. Okay, coming back to what we have achieved, I think we have achieved something. By April 2015, we had, we formed this ELRC consortium, and it took us a year to identify the 60 national anchor points, and you already know that it is not 60, it is maximum 59, because we leave one. We're missing one representative. Actually, we're missing a couple more. Today, we have identified more than 400 data holders all over Europe. It is not a negligible amount because we're talking about data holders. We're not talking about data sets. And if we come to data sets, there is substantial progress. In April 2017, we provided through ELRC, through the ELRC Share repository, to which I will come in a minute, a total of 225 language resources, language data sets. What is of particular importance is that 78% of these data sets are available as open data or licensed under the most permissive Creative Commons, so-called licenses. And of course, there is a percentage that comes with restrictive licensing conditions. Now, this is in 2017, April 2017. Almost 2 years after, a bit less than 2 years, we are up to 650 language resources, 76% of which is licensed under CC or other types of open licenses, and 24% with non-standard licenses, or is still under a status of reviewing. I'm pretty certain that you're really curious to see where Croatia stands. So Croatia is not doing that badly. We're here, Croatia, we're here. Not bad, can be better for sure. There is ample room for improvement. It is clear that the big languages are doing much, much better. This is German, here is French. But there are also smaller languages, maybe not as small as Greek or Croatian, etc., but I mean Polish, that are doing a pretty good job. So there is room for improvement. Things are really good, but we can do better, and I'm pretty certain that we will do better in the months to come. Now, maybe you notice that here there is no English, simply because what we're interested in, and this is what we're counting all these language pairs, English to language X, where X runs over the official languages of the EU, plus, of course, Norwegian and Icelandic. And then if we add English, you see that, well, things change a bit, but don't worry, because as you can imagine, here the sum of all these languages most probably adds to something more than the English column. Okay, now where is all this data? These things here, where are they? Where can you find them? And where can you search for them and download them? You go to elrcshare.eu. This is the ELRC repository that we use for all possible communication scenarios around language resources. And what are the possible communication scenarios? I want to provide a data set, okay? We have all those workflows implemented in elrcshare.eu that help you as a provider provide and deposit your data set in ELRC Share. And suppose that you want to search and download because you want to use something privately or non-privately, then you go again to elrcshare.eu, you search, and depending on the licensing conditions of the particular data set, you can download and use it in your own translation memory, or if you want to train a system, then you can use the same data set for creating a model and running it on your system. Right. We promised help. We promised help with technical and legal issues. So we have the so-called ELRC Technical and Legal Help Desk with all possible ways of communication. So you can call, you can Skype, you can send an email, you can do all sorts of things. Just go to lrcoordination.eu. This is the official ELRC site through which you registered, for instance, for this workshop, and through which you can also navigate and get access to ELRC Share. You can find your way to ELRC Share also through this website. Now you go there and then /help desk and you are presented with all communication modalities for getting help. There are cases, these are really interesting, where there are problems of, for instance, like the data is bulky, or the data is confidential, or the data has some problems, or the data is a bit untidy. Some things are in one folder, some things are in another folder. Can you help us? Can you, ELRC, help us? And the answer is yes, yes, we can help you. And actually, we can help you by flying in ELRC experts and collaborating with the local experts, the national anchor points in the first place, and trying to do whatever it takes, mainly technically, but also legally, to process the data and add value to your data in the sense of turning this data into useful translation data using which a translation memory could be fed, or another type of translation system could be trained. You can ask for on-site assistance, again, through lrcoordination.eu/services. It is quite simple to fill it in, but I spare you the details for the time being, because immediately after lunch there will be a very nice and lively presentation by my colleague, Maria Yangu, who will run you through the ELRC Share repository, things to do, things that could be avoided or should be avoided. And last but not least, and most importantly, I would say, what happens to the data once the data has been deposited to the repository. What we do, what sort of processing, etc., in which way we can return the data to you, whether the data needs to be shared with others or just returned to you and the European Commission, and things like that. Everything will be exemplified by Maria Yangu after the lunch. And this was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention.